It's about dang time that we do a reading wrap-up. Hi everyone and welcome back to another reading wrap-up. I'm a little late on my spring wrap-up, but today we will be reviewing every book I read this spring, which for me is March, April, May. I know a lot of different people in the book space will do the first 3 months of the year and then the second 3 months, but I love to do them in seasons, and for my brain, the seasons that make the most sense is that spring is March, April, and May. So that is what we are going to be going through today. I'm very excited, but I did also slump pretty bad second half of April and then into May. So May we only have one book, and I also have an announcement for everyone that I've been waiting to tell, and it's very exciting, but it also has very directly impacted my reading experience. So we will get into that once we get to the April and May books. But first, let's go through everything I read in March. The very first book that I finished in March, I had started it in February, finished it on March 2nd, and that is Air of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. This is a very popular series. The Throne of Glass series is very, very highly recommended. My boyfriend was telling me over and over again that I had to read it because he's actually finished the entire Throne of Glass series and absolutely loves it. I am only halfway through. I have yet to start Queen of Shadows or any of the other part of the series, but I started the first 4 and finished the first 4 earlier this year in March, and I ended up rating Air of Fire a 4-star. I might have a controversial opinion when it comes to this book because it sounds like most other people don't feel this way, but at least for me, I think I struggle with multiple timelines because I get very focused on our main characters and I just want to hear what they're doing. I've experienced this before with other like fiction books that are in different decades or centuries. I know Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil and then Wayward was also a book that was 3 different timelines. For this book, we have 3 different storylines, so we follow 3 different sets of characters and what they're doing throughout the book. For me, that was very hard to keep up with. I think it's just because I get so invested in the main characters that I don't want to divert, but I know that a lot of people really loved getting introduced to Manon and hearing Manon's storyline, what was going on with her, but for me it was just a little distracting. So hopefully I don't feel that way for the entire series. I don't know how the other books in the series are formatted, if they're all different storylines as well, I'm not sure, so that'll be something to get used to for sure, but I still really enjoyed this book. I feel so bad for Dorian. I absolutely hate his father. There were so many great characters and you really fall in love with these characters very quickly and you really develop personal feelings for them and you want the best for them and you just want them to succeed. I feel like Sarah J. Maas is very good at making you feel connected to the characters, which I really appreciated. However, a big plus that I really did love about the Manon storyline is her wyvern. I feel like her wyvern was such a good comic relief. Her wyvern is so sassy, so funny, and I really enjoyed their little banter that they had. I thought that was hilarious. Since this is so long ago, I'm going through my review again and I remember just writing poor Dorian, poor Aelin, and poor Rowan. They all have such tragic histories and they've been through so much, and I really felt for them, kind of as I was explaining earlier. Overall, I felt like this was a very good continuation of a series. I feel like this is where a lot of people start falling in love with the series. My favorite still is Throne of Glass because I love a trial, I love a game, I love a competition. That's still my favorite book. That I gave a 4.5 star. So I am looking forward to Queen of Shadows because I have heard that Queen of Shadows and then the last book, Kingdom of Ash, are everyone's favorites. So we will see how I feel about the rest of the series. The next book that I finished in March is kind of a random one, but that's Booked for Murder by PJ Nelson. This was just a random book that I picked up at the bookstore. I loved the cover, and then it's actually about a murder mystery that's set in a small town and the main character is taking over her aunt's bookshop. So I thought that was just the cutest little like book about books kind of thing. I love reading books that are about people who also love books. So I felt like this was a great combination of a book of people who like books plus murder mystery, and I thought it was super sweet. Overall, I gave it a 4-star as well. I really enjoyed this book, but it wasn't anything like groundbreaking or crazy. Even in my review, I commented that it might even be a 3.75, so it's a pretty low 4-star. I thought it was a really good whodunit kind of a thing. It's a cozy mystery whodunit, not very like thriller, heart racing. It's a very cozy, slow pace. You learn all about the little characters in the town, all the different personalities in this small town, and then you also learn about all the drama drama and the different dynamics between people, and you really start guessing like, oh, who could have done this? Who could have done that? Who is capable of doing that? And then this book also just has so many different twists and turns. So at one point something's on fire, and then someone dies, and then someone else dies, and it's like all over the place. So there's multiple different suspects, which was really fun. And everyone seemed to have their own motive. It wasn't very clear who could have been responsible for everything going on. However, I felt like the main character slowly started becoming a menace towards everyone else. She was very interesting, just very directly calling people out, not being stealthy whatsoever, just acting a little careless, reckless, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, just something that I'm like, ooh, I wouldn't do that. That doesn't seem like a great idea. Just one of those moments where you're like, oh girl, I don't know if that's the best approach. This book also has a lot of mentions of Diet Coke, which is very random, but I love Diet Coke. I'm a Diet Coke girly, but it's also one of those things where if they mention something from modern day too much, then it starts to get weird. I think this one was the perfect amount. I think if they said it a little more, it would have just been a turn off, but everyone has their own personal opinion when it comes to mentioning things that are in the real world, like Taylor Swift or TikTok or Instagram. Everyone has their own opinions on stuff like that. I did also listen to this one on audiobook, and the narrator did such a phenomenal job making the story light and funny. I feel like she was the perfect narrator to really bring this story to life, and I thought she did amazing, especially with the main character. Although all this crazy shit's going on around her, she still has this playful, fun energy, and the way that she like enunciates the words on the page is so fun, and it makes you feel like you're watching almost a sitcom, but also a thriller. So overall, it was a decent thriller, good pick-me-up if you want something just casual, fun to read, whodunit, cozy mystery. This is a good one to pick up. Now on a totally opposite end of the spectrum, I also finished The Secret History by Donna Tartt in March. This is a very specific book. I don't know to this day how I feel about this book. I ended up giving this book a 4-star overall. This is a very interesting book. Even while I was reading it, I was just thinking like, this is a very interesting story to write. I would love to speak with Donna Tartt and ask her where she came up with the ideas for this book, because it's such an interesting story, and I don't think I ever expected what came out of this book when I hear people talking about how popular this book is. I've heard this book hyped up so much that you would think it's a classic. It basically is a modern classic, but I feel like people hype it up as much as they hype up like Wuthering Heights and Jane Eyre and all those other classic books. This book, people basically say you must read before you die. And I don't know if I feel that way. I think I'm glad that I read it, and I'm glad that I know, but it's just so interesting. I don't know. And I also don't think I would ever reread it. It's a very long book. Don't let this fool you. This is a thick book who has like Bible thin pages. This is over 500 pages. It's 559 pages is how long this book is. It's definitely not one to read in one sitting, at least for me. Maybe you're a really fast reader and you just love this type of book. That it could be for you, but sadly not for me. Also, I had a really big issue with the first like 100 to 120 pages. I just felt like the first, I just spit a little bit. I just feel like the first 100 pages could have been taken out or could have been reduced to like 20 pages. The first 100 to 120 pages, we're getting the setting of this academic situation. We have our main character and he is going to this school. He identifies this like group of kids that all hang out and are all in this special class with this one teacher, and he's like trying to infiltrate that group but then kind of is weirded out by them. And we go through 100 pages of just him going to class and then him figuring out life, and we didn't really get to any of the plot. It was just all build up, and while I appreciate the build up and the explaining of things, I feel like it was a lot. I feel like we didn't need that much build up, if that makes sense. Also, don't hate me for critiquing this book at all. I know this is a favorite for a lot of people, so I apologize. We all have our own opinions, but it did get juicy. Once we got past that 120 pages, weird things started happening. The friendship dynamics were very strange. I truly don't know how to summarize this book. So much happens that I don't even like know what to say. I feel like the characters were so all over the place, but then it also made the story very entertaining. Even in my review, I had said Bunny needs to learn how to shut up, Charles needs to learn how to put down the liquor, Henry needs to get off his high horse, Richard needs needs to get a backbone. Camilla needs to move and hang out with other people. Francis needs to be by himself. As a whole, this group is so toxic and needs to leave this college bubble. But I do also think it is objectively very good writing, and I do recommend it to people. It is such a popular book. I feel like it's one of those books that you just need to read to understand, just to like be in the know. Like, I kind of had FOMO. It just felt like it went on forever. I felt like I was never gonna finish it, and I actually switched to the audiobook. I was reading it physically for a while, and then it felt like it just kept dragging on and I wasn't even halfway through. Then I decided to listen to it on the audiobook, and it started to speed up a little bit, started to be a little bit more digestible. So to each their own. If you're finding that it's going a little too slow, I would recommend trying the audiobook, but I also understand why people DNF this book, just because it's so hard to get into and then it feels like it'll never end. But that being said, it is incredible writing, and I did still give it a 4-star. Okay, we took a quick break to recharge the camera, but now we are going to move on to our next book that we read in March. We actually have an audiobook, and that is Bound by Ali Hazelwood. I ended up giving this book a 4.5 star. It's a mix between a full-length novel and a novella. The audiobook was about 7 hours, I believe, and I ended up really enjoying this book. I honestly wish it was a full-length book. I think she's coming out with like a part 2 or a sequel that's getting bounded together with Bound and being published as a physical book, so I'm very excited to see where that goes. But this book was so much fun. I was so, what's the word? Enthralled from the start, I guess. Ali Hazelwood is my favorite author of all time, or at least until I find an author that tops her, but she is my favorite author, and none of her books have been less than a 4-star for me, so I was very pleased with this book. I really wish we had more time with the characters, but I did appreciate what we had. I always love how Ali Hazelwood makes the most feminist, sassy, quirky, smart female main characters, and the men are always also very smart but brooding and dark and mysterious. I love how she always makes her characters similar but very different, like the same vibe that you know going into the book that you're gonna like, but they're not copy paste, if that makes sense. I really enjoyed this book. I just realized I don't think I've been explaining what the books are about. So this book is about a con artist and a professor with too many secrets that are bound together in this intoxicating new dark academia romance. So our main female character is Veronica, or Vero, and she grew up with drifters. She knows her way around different cons, and she's very good at replicating old documents. And then the professor, who is Dr. Victor Ashworth, hires her and then kidnaps her, politely it says, and makes her an unusual offer to forge a mysterious ancient manuscript for him. So they start working together, build some feelings, and it was absolute perfection. My only critique is I wish it was a little bit longer. Our next book is another Ali Hazelwood. It was another audiobook but recently became published, and that is Two Can Play. I was really wanting to go into Ali Hazelwood's backlog. What's it called? Is that what that's called? Because discography is for music, is backlog for books. Anyway, I've been trying to read all of the Ali Hazelwood books that are currently out. I still have Not in Love left, and then I might be updated. Oh, besides those other novellas that she wrote, and Check and Mate, the YA. Anyway, I've been trying to go through all of Ali Hazelwood's work, and this was one of the books that I also picked up. The audiobook was only 4.5 hours, so obviously it is very teeny tiny. I think the book ended up being published in 187 pages, so obviously a very quick read, but I thought it was beautiful nonetheless. This book I ended up giving a 4.25 simply because we didn't have that much time with the characters. It's only 180 something pages. I feel like you can't really grasp absolutely everything that you want to do. This one's a little more insta-love, insta-lust for those who really don't like that trope. Again, it's a very short book, so we have to get a lot of things moving. This one takes place, I believe they're both gamers or coders. What are they? Gamers? I'm pretty sure they create games. Yeah, so they both create video games, but they're on rival companies, and this one business basically tasks them with a competition, kind of, where the two companies will compete, and whoever makes a better product ends up getting the contract. So our two main characters are on separate teams, and they have to compete against each other, but they also respect the hell out of each other, and they really respect the other person's work. So it's kind of like rivals to lovers, but also I've had a crush on you forever, miscommunication about what the other person thinks of the other person, and it ended up being very good. I still loved it a lot. Even though I am not into gaming whatsoever, I still really enjoyed this story. This is another one where I wish it was a longer book, but I really appreciate how Allie makes people fall in love with STEM and different topics that you might not be interested in. One of my favorite books by her, Love Theoretically, is about physics, and I couldn't give two craps about physics, just like I couldn't give two craps about video games, but I love how she makes you really care for these characters and makes you want to learn more about each of these fields. I especially love how she always writes about women in STEM. Also, as I said earlier, I love how sassy and witty and intelligent our female main characters are, and how dark and brooding our male main characters are. So I really love this book. I just wish we had a lot more time with the characters. I think if this was a full-length book, it would have been a 5-star, but there's only so much you could do in 187 pages. So overall, it was about a 4.25 for me. Continuing on in March is a book I don't have physically, but that is The Compound. I actually really enjoyed this book. I feel like people either love this book or hate this book. I know people who have given it a 5-star, I know people have given it a 4-star, or people who have given it a 1-star. So my final verdict is a 4.5 star. I actually really did enjoy this, but I also kind of wish I listened to this during summer when Love Island was on. Love Island is currently on, and thinking back to this book, I found it so fascinating how they incorporated Love Island, Lord of the Flies, Survivor, all into one, because they do have to compete for a lot of things. So I'll give you the brief synopsis. This is basically Love Island. All these couples are on this island to find love, but there's also a competition element, which reminds me of Survivor. So throughout the competition, throughout Love Island, they are tasked with doing personal tasks or group tasks. So if you think of Survivor and the reward challenges, it's basically kind of like that, where they do Love Island type of games, but then they earn like food or furniture for their back deck or different things for the house. Kind of like a reward challenge from Survivor, but it's still in like the corny drama version of Love Island, where the competitions aren't really that physical. It's more about like creating drama. And then the islanders also have an option to do individual tasks, but you can't tell people that whatever you're doing is for a task. So it's like this unspoken rule where if you're stirring stuff up, you can't explain that you then get a prize for that. And the prizes vary. I think at first it was like a hairbrush, a comb, a towel, and then they go all the way up to like a diamond necklace, a watch, like very, very nice gifts. So obviously people want to stay longer for the better prizes, and it ends up not really being about relationships at all. It ends up being about how long you can stay and get more prizes, and then try to like get people out and vote people out and like exile them and all these little things. So there's so many dynamics at play, and I really, really enjoyed it. And then it also takes a dark twist where that Lord of the Flies element comes in, because people can be selfish and can be very, what's the word? Can be very cruel when it comes to getting the things that they want. So obviously we have a few bad eggs in the story that really try to dominate everybody else, and there's so many things going on. I actually really enjoyed this book. I thought it was very entertaining, but I also understand why people might not like it, if that makes sense. Another part that I did like about this book is how many different characters you have. Like imagine actually watching Love Island and how many different people there are, how many different personalities they are, and then putting them into a book. It's really interesting to see all of the dynamics at play and get a little more time to observe the natural habitat. It was very interesting, but from what I recall, it's only told from one person's point of view. It's not like you get each person's point of view. I think maybe towards the end you get multiple, but I could be confusing it with a different book. But I think most of it is told from our main character's point of view. Overall, it was very entertaining, very engaging. I wasn't bored for a second, and I do encourage you to read this book since it is so like polarizing. People either absolutely hate it or absolutely love it. So I would love for you to read it if you haven't already, and then comment below your thoughts on it. Alright, we are slowly approaching the end of March. I really read a lot more in March than I thought. The next book in March we have is The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. I don't know how to feel about this book. This book was a lot, and I would recommend look up trigger warnings for this book. I would recommend going into this book with the right mindset. I read this book in March, obviously. A lot of people say that it's a winter read, but I honestly recommend reading it coming out of winter because it's such a dark and heavy story, and it takes place in Alaska during like brutal winters. It takes place along like a decade time span, but most of the scenery is set in winter. So if you're someone with seasonal depression or who just gets the winter blues, I honestly recommend reading it in a time where you are no longer in the winter blues or seasonal depression. For me at least, I loved reading this and then being able to look outside and be like, wow, I'm so glad we don't have winter anymore. I feel like if I read this in the dead of winter, I'd get even more depressed about how cold and wintry it is. So to each their own. It is very fitting to read in the winter, but definitely proceed with caution if you're someone who's very affected by the weather like I am. I love sunshine. I feel like I'm a plant. I need exposure to the sun to feel joy, and in the winter it gets a little doomy and gloomy, so I feel like if I also read this in the winter, I'd be like, oh my god, winter's never gonna end. Anyway, this book is about a family who, how do you describe this family, honestly? We have a mom, a dad, and then a young girl. I can't remember how old she is in the beginning. I want to say like 12, 13. She's a young girl, but they've kind of moved all over the country because the dad is a Vietnam veteran, I believe it is. He's a veteran of some kind. I think it's Vietnam, and he has PTSD, and he doesn't really know how to handle PTSD, and then he kind of takes it out on the family. Not kind of, he very much takes it out on the family. So that's another thing to look up trigger warnings about. If you're sensitive to topics of PTSD, mental health, abuse, things like that, that is very, very prevalent in this story. Domestic violence is a main topic of this story, and if that is something that makes you uncomfortable or something that you've dealt with personally, I would definitely look up trigger warnings, look up some reviews before you start this book. Oh yes, 13-year-old Lenny. Okay, it's on the back of the book. She's 13, then her father comes up with this wonderful idea to move them to the middle of nowhere, Alaska, because one of his buddies from the war left him a house that's in Alaska. But it's not a big city in Alaska. It's not like the capital of Alaska. It is nowhere, Alaska. The way it's described, there's like the general store that's very small, and then they've got a few friends up there. There's only like 4 families that they know of up there, and from the very start, the locals warn them, you need to prepare for winter. You need to spend all of spring, summer, and fall preparing for winter because you will die out here if you're not prepared. They make it very, very clear that you need to prepare and you need to watch out for yourself, and you can't go anywhere alone because the wilderness is crazy and bears and animals and everything. So there's a very real sense of danger in this book, and this family is deciding to do this with no experience, and it kind of unravels from there. But what I did like about this book is you go through, I think it's almost a decade, if not a little less. But you go through so many different chapters of different timelines, but in order, which I appreciate. As I said earlier, I struggle with timelines if they go back and forth. In this book, you see the progression from when Lenny was 13 to when she was like 18 or 19, and then I think there's like an epilogue section where she's like a full adult, if I remember correctly. So you really see her life and how this change in her story really impacted her growing up and her developing as a person. It's very interesting. Anyway, on to my review. I actually really enjoyed this book. I ended up giving it a 4.5 star, but the one issue I had is that for, I would say 80% of this book, it was a 5 star. Beautiful writing, beautiful explanation, beautiful character development, and then something happened with the last 20% that just made me really mad and upset. And I kind of don't even remember what that was now, thinking about it. I don't remember what pissed me off so much, but I ended up quite literally throwing my book across my bed because I was so upset with how the story was changing, and I didn't like how the story changed. So I was explaining it to my boyfriend at the time. I said if I had to rate only the first 80%, I would rate it a 5 star, but if I had to rate the last 20%, it would be a 2 star. So when it comes to my rating, I decided to still give it a 4.5 because most of the book is a 5-star book. I felt like I wanted to give it credit for what it was for a majority of the book. I didn't want to give the book a 3 star just because I didn't like the ending, because most of the book, 80 to 90% of the book, is beautiful and wonderful and like perfect. So I didn't want to punish it so severely, so I only took it down a 1/2 star because a lot of it I still loved and enjoyed, and it's such a crazy story. And I do have this reading vlog coming soon. I have been putting off this reading vlog for so long. I really need a kick in the pants because I've just been taking way too long editing this reading vlog. I honestly don't even remember what other books are in that reading vlog, but you'll be seeing all my thoughts, feelings, opinions on this book soon. But for now, just know I was frustrated towards the end, but it is still a beautiful book, and I gave it a 4.5 star. Now, the very last book of March, and my favorite book of March, was In Her Own League by Liz Tomforty. I adore this book. I ended up giving it a 4.5, but I think I might change it to a 5 star because I still can't stop thinking about this book. I love this book so much, and I was able to grab a first edition copy that has the sprayed edges. I honestly grabbed this this weeks after it had been published because I read this book on my Kindle when it came out, and then I finally got a physical copy and I was able to find the Sprayed Edges edition. So I was very, very excited about that. This book is so good. Oh my god, I love this book so much. We have Monty and Reese. I love them so much, and I'm someone who hasn't even read the Windy City series. Now, I do recommend reading the Windy City series because I feel like I missed out on a lot of flashbacks and connections and like nostalgia that would have come if I read Windy City first and then this book. But that being said, it is not a requirement. I still fully understood what was going on. It still stands on its own without reading the Windy City series, but I will say I kind of wish in hindsight that I read Windy City first. But I was just too excited to read a Liz Tom Ford book, and in this moment I did start Mile High, so I have started my Windy City journey, but I kind of wish that I read the full series because if you didn't know, the Windy City series is based on 3 different sports. So we have hockey, basketball, and baseball. Books 3 and 4 are based on the baseball team, and it's based on brothers. The book 3, the FMC is Miller, which is the daughter of Monty, who is in this book. So this book is based off of book 3 and 4. So if you wanted to read them out of order, you just need to read Caught Up and Play Along because that is all the characters that are involved in this book. From my knowledge, we didn't have anybody from books 1, 2, or 5, but this book is about Reese, who is the owner of the baseball team that is in books 3 and 4, and then the male main character is Monty, who is the baseball coach and also the dad of Miller, who's in book 3. So it's very connected. It is still a very good time even if you haven't read books 3 and 4 in Windy City, but again, I would kind of recommend it. And Reese is going through a hard time because she is the first female owner of an MLB team, and people are being very misogynistic and sexist towards her, and she kind of has an uphill battle just in her own career. And then she starts developing feelings towards Monty, but it's a situation where she can't fall in love with Monty because it's a really bad look and she needs to focus on her career right now, but love just has a way. So you kind of go through their story, their struggles, the push and pull of what she should do versus what she wants to do, and it's a really fun book. It's also great representation for plus size women. Throughout this book there are mentions of Reese's weight, but not in a negative way. She knows her figure, she knows how comfortable she is in her body, and Monty always makes her feel comfortable. He says at one point, like, I lift heavy for a reason when he picks her up, and makes her feel super confident and secure in her body. And I love seeing that representation where the woman is plus size, but the whole book isn't about her weight or how she's insecure. In this book it's about how she's powerful and secure in herself, and it's not a negative thing that she's plus sized. We're starting to get some clouds and rain, so I apologize if the lighting is a little off, but let's get into our books from April. The very first book I don't have a physical copy to, but that is Culpability by, who's it by? By Bruce Halsinger. This book was not what I expected. I don't know if I just didn't read half of the synopsis, but from my perspective, I read the synopsis in a bookstore and I was like, oh, this is very interesting. The family gets in a car accident when their son was driving, and it kind of alters their family dynamic, and I love learning and reading about family dynamics and how a tragedy or an incident or an accident can change how the family reacts. But then I don't know if I just forgot or didn't read the rest of the synopsis, and it actually turns out to be about AI. The daughter is basically friends with AI in like ChatGPT basically, or a version of ChatGPT, and it's starting to work against her, not in like a dystopian way, but basically telling her everything she wants to hear, and then starts questioning her, and then the girl's like, wait, you're supposed to be my friend, why are you questioning me? Things like that. So I really enjoyed the dynamic with the parents and figuring out if this was an accident, what happened, was the teenager who was driving at fault, was he distracted, why didn't anybody notice, things like that. I really loved learning about that. But then the AI stuff I just didn't care about. I don't support AI, I don't like AI, I hate what it's doing to our environment, so I don't really care about reading about it in my free time. But I did feel like it blended the ethics of AI very well, but that wasn't really what I meant to read about, if that makes sense. So overall I gave this a 3 stars. star. Not a terrible book by any means, but just not what I expected. If you do like learning about AI and the ethics behind AI, this could be a good book for you, especially in a fictional sense. It's a fictional scenario about the impacts of AI, so it could be entertaining for you, just not the book for me. The next book I read was actually part of our 24-hour readathon, if you watched that video, but we have Hooked by Emily McIntyre, and this was actually my first 5-star of the year. Of course, if we're not counting In Her Own League, this was my first 5-star. I fell in love with this book. I absolutely adore Emily McIntyre. I respect her so much. As I said in that video, she is fighting stage 4 cancer, if you did not know, and she is still a full-time author. I respect the hell out of her. It takes so much just to wake up every day when you're going through stage 4 cancer treatment, or just any cancer treatment in general. It is absolutely hell. So the fact that she's still publishing books every year is honestly astounding. So I will very much be supporting her in the future. I do want to finish this series. I want to start her other series. I really loved this book. As for this book, she makes it very clear in the beginning that it is not a retelling. I will read what it says. It says, Hooked is a dark contemporary romance. It is an adult fractured fairy tale. It is not a fantasy or a retelling. The main character is a villain. If you're looking for a safe read with redemption and a bad guy turned into a hero, you will not find it in these pages. So what does she call it? A fractured fairy tale? Is that what she called it? An adult fractured fairy tale. So our main characters are Hook and Wendy. Hook also goes by James. That's his like real name. And then Hook is his nickname, his like bad boy nickname, because he has a blade that is shaped like a hook. He doesn't have an actual hook like in Peter Pan. He has this special blade that he uses in his schemes that has a hook, and he is well known for that. This is basically like a mafia dynamic. He is very intertwined into the underworld, mafia type things. He sells substances which he calls fairy dust, so I thought that was really fun. I think this book was so fun to see all the different little Easter eggs of how she incorporated the original Peter Pan story into this book. We have all the same character names, we have things like pixie dust, we have all these special little moments, and a majority of the story also takes place on James's yacht, so I thought it was funny that they incorporate a boat as well, because he is Captain Hook, or Hook, and he has a boat, whatever. So I thought it was really fun. I thought it was a very special story, but it is a dark romance, so if you do not like dark themes or dark romance, I don't recommend if you don't like that type of romance. I understand the criticisms with dark romance, but I do not care, and I enjoy it, and I think it can be fun and sometimes a little interesting to be a little taboo. So this book made me blush so much. I was so giddy. I was so happy that a book made me giggly and squealing and blushing again. I haven't felt that feeling in a long time, so I really appreciate Emily McIntyre and this book. Our next book I also don't have a physical copy of, but that is One and Only by Maureen Gu. This is such a great book. It is such an incredible book. I also rated this a 5-star. I thought this book was so special because we follow this main character whose family does matchmaking services, but her family also has some type of supernatural ability. This isn't like a supernatural book, but they have this ability to see previous lives, and they can see the person that you fell in love with in your past lives, like who your soulmate is basically. So they know who you're fated to be with for life. However, our main character, I think is in her 30s or maybe 40s. I can't remember. I know she's older, and she knows who her fated is, but she can't find him. Like, she doesn't know where he is. She knows his name, but she can't find him anywhere. So she's basically just trying to have fun until she finds her fated person. And then one day she goes on this date. She starts dating this guy who's just fun, flirty, whatever. He's younger than her, so she's like, whatever, it's not gonna go anywhere. But this is a fun little summer fling, until said fling introduces her to her soulmate, to her fated person. And then she has to decide, do I go with my fated, who I'm supposed to be with, who I've been destined to fall in love with, or do I go with this guy who is kind of cute and I've started to develop feelings for? And it's a huge love triangle. It stressed me out so much. I gave this a 5-star purely for how bad my chest hurt, how fast my heart was beating. I was so invested in this story. It felt so parasocial and concerning, but I did not care. I just wanted to know who she ended up with. And the worst part is that I didn't know who I wanted her to end up with. Both options were so good. Both men are amazing, and I felt like she could have been happy with either of them, and I was so torn the entire time and just devastated for whoever was going to end up brokenhearted. The one annoying thing about this book, however, is how often often they bring up age. Again, I can't remember how old the main character is. I think she's either mid-30s or early 40s, and the fling or the guy that she starts dating is in his 20s. So it's this huge thing that she's insecure about, and I think they just brought it up too many times where it kind of became annoying. It's like, it's not that big of a deal. You're both adults. He's like 26 or 27. He's an adult. You're an adult. If you want to be together, just be together. That was the only annoying part of this, but again, I still gave it a 5-star because I was so emotionally invested. I was devastated for this made-up character who's gonna get their heart broken. The last book that was in that readathon video is The Game Changer by Lana Ferguson. Lana Ferguson is my second favorite author right now. She reminds me so much of Ellie Hazelwood, so I obviously became obsessed with her writing as well. This is such a fun fake dating romance. It's about a baker and a hockey player, and I absolutely loved this book because when I was younger, I wanted to be a baker so bad. I wanted to open a bakery with my cousin. We were obsessed with the DC Cupcakes show, and we just wanted to become bakers and live our best lives as 8-year-olds. So it was really fun to see this character kind of live out that dream for me. She's actually a baker on a network television show, so she's kind of like a Rachel Ray baking TV show, but her ratings have been going down lately, so she needs something to kind of oomph her views, and she just so happens to be siblings with an NHL hockey player who originally she was going to have on the show to boost ratings because this is actually based in Boston, and as we all know, Boston is a huge hockey city, so she was going to have her brother on, no big deal, but the captain of the hockey team just recently moved back to town. He got traded to this hometown again where he started his career. He left for a few years and now he's back, and he has a scarred reputation, I will say. I wouldn't say it's a bad reputation, but it's a questionable reputation, so he ends up going on the show to boost his morale and his image, and it just ends up working out for both of them very, very well. I absolutely enjoyed it. I really needed just a fun, flirty, fake dating romance, something really light to get me out of that devastation of the last book, and this one certainly did it. It's such an easy book to read, so light, so fun, so sexy and flirty. Highly recommend. I ended up giving it a 4.5 star. Oh, also, I loved that these two talked to each other. Anytime either of them had an issue, they just told each other and explained it, and nothing happened. At least I don't remember any like big miscommunication happening. At one point, he has a secret that he's afraid to tell her, but then he just tells her and she takes it totally fine and there's no drama whatsoever. It was so stress-free. It was such a good time. I love when a book doesn't stress me out with miscommunication. Then we have our last book in April that I finished before my big announcement that I will tell you guys. We read The Wedding People, and I absolutely adored this book. I thought it was such a fresh take on everyday people. I felt like each character was a real person with real issues, and it felt like a real thing that could happen to people. It just felt so raw and honest, and I really appreciated how the author portrayed everybody because you could see yourself in any one of those characters and you can understand what they're thinking and where their head's at and how they could have gotten there. It was such a refreshing book. This book I ended up giving a 4.5 star. It is about a wedding, but our main character, Phoebe, I believe? Phoebe. Our main character is Phoebe. She's going through a really tough time. She just divorced her husband, or her husband divorced her, I don't remember which way, but she's going through a really bad breakup of her marriage, and life's just kind of falling apart for her. She is really struggling, so she actually goes to this really nice hotel that she's always wanted to visit to end her life. However, the hotel has been fully booked by a wedding party, so all these people are there for the wedding and she's the only one who's not there for the wedding. Everyone assumes that she is part of the wedding. Everyone keeps asking her, how do you know the bride? How do you know the groom? And she just wants to be left alone. Then the bride makes it her personal mission to not only have the perfect day, but to also keep Phoebe from making a scene on her wedding day, as you could phrase it. The bride obviously wants to have her perfect weekend, and a big event that Phoebe is planning will definitely damper her wedding weekend. So she's doing everything she can to selfishly not ruin her wedding weekend, but also to save Phoebe's life. Then we also have the groom. What's his name? Carl? I forgot the groom's name. Gary. It's Gary. Not close to Carl at all. But Gary's the groom. He's also going through his own thing. He has his own doubts. Lila has her own doubts. Everyone's kind of in such a weird position. And then you also see their close friends and family in the dynamic. I just love this book so much. I thought it was a great reflection of everyday people, of all the struggles that go on during someone's life. Even on the biggest day of their lives, when everything looks picture perfect, you never know what's going through someone's head and what's going on in their life. And I felt like this was a great representation of that. So that was actually the last book that I read in April before getting some big news. That was April 9th and I didn't finish another book until May 18th. So if you can imagine, we had a big announcement. However, I am going to review the last book because I only read one book in May, and then we will get to the announcement and then we will end this video. But our last book, the only book we read in May because of said announcement, was actually Yesteryear, because everyone was talking about it. I was really interested to see what everyone was saying and I didn't want to be left out. I had a little FOMO and I wanted to be in on the conversations. So if you don't know, this is about a trad wife, and there's some type of alternate timeline where she actually ends up getting transported back into the timeline of the 1850s, I want to say, sometime in the 1800s, which is kind of what trad wives cosplay as. The main timeline is current day, 21st century. We have microwaves, we have ovens, we have heat, we have electricity, we have air conditioning, all the things, all the privileges of life. But our main character, Natalie, is a trad wife on Instagram, and she portrays this picture perfect life. She has a farm, she has all these amazing things in life. The entire time I kept picturing Ballerina Farm, if you know about Ballerina Farm on TikTok. I've heard that this book is based on Ballerina Farm and Ruby Franke and all the drama that went into Ruby Franke's story and the charges she ended up with and the child abuse and all those things. It kind of knits together those two themes of what trad wives tried to display and the impact of social media and having your kids online and using your kids as entertainment and for monetary reasons. So I felt like there was a very good theme and a very good lesson in this story. You really learn about the impacts on these characters, on these young kids, for having to put on a show for their mom, having to be like fake and put on this performance for these millions of followers. But it's also a rude awakening for our main character, Natalie, when she's transported back to the 1800s, where she doesn't know how to do anything. She is obviously very confused. She tries to run away. She gets hurt a lot because she doesn't understand that this is her new reality. And we're in the 1850s and you can't just get an ambulance to the hospital every time you get a cut. So she struggles a lot. She learns a lot. The main character is very, very unlikable. So if you don't like an unlikable main character, you are going to struggle a lot with this book. For me, it was actually kind of refreshing to hate the main character. I feel like most of the time with books, you want to fall in love with the main character and really understand them and empathize with them. With this book, I actually loved how much I didn't like Natalie. I loved getting this inside scoop on what other people are doing in their lives, because I feel like even though it's fiction, I feel like these people definitely exist. I don't know if they're to the extent that Natalie is, but there is a bunch of reality based on this book. The author did a great job pulling from real examples on social media. So it was a very, very interesting book to experience. I ended up giving it a 4-star because at times it was kind of dragging on a little bit, but in the end it was a very interesting read, and I highly suggest for anyone who is confused or fascinated by trad wives and whatever kind of theme that they're trying to portray. I'm still confused by trad wives and I would love to see like what their life actually looks like. Oh my god, I just realized I forgot a book in March. We forgot to review The Only One Left. I finished this in March, right between The Compound and The Great Alone. I guess I just did not include that. I'll quickly review this. This is like a horror thriller book. It's about an old woman who is hiring a caregiver. This old woman has a notorious reputation for being a murderer. Everyone says that she murdered her whole family and she's the only survivor, and now she needs a caregiver because I believe she's paralyzed and just obviously very old. Okay, there's like a little rhyme on the back. It said, at 17, Lenora Hope hung her sister with a rope, stabbed her father with a knife, took her mother's happy life. It wasn't me, Lenora said, but she's the only one not dead. So that's Lenora, the older woman who is hiring a caregiver. Then Kit comes in to be said caregiver, and there's a lot of twists and turns in this book. What I really appreciated about this book is just how often you're thrown like 180 back and forth. You think something's happening and then there's a twist and then there's another twist. I felt like there was at least 6 or 7 different plot twists in this book, which I found fascinating, but I've also heard from some people that it was like a bit too much, which I also understand. I ended up giving this book a 4.5 star. I thought it was fascinating. I never really knew what was about to happen next. There was a few times where I was genuinely shocked, like, oh, like I did not see that coming whatsoever. So that is my kind of final review on The Only One Left. I believe, was this in a reading vlog? I'm not sure if this was in a reading vlog or not, but if you want more information on this book, I will do a better review maybe on a short form video. Alright, I will stop annoying you guys with this mystery announcement. I'm not gonna make it a huge deal on this channel. I still want this channel to be focused on books in my life, but that being said, we have a new bestie coming to the channel. So I found out in the middle of April, was genuinely dumbfounded. This was not something we were planning, but we are still very excited and very scared and very worried and concerned and nervous and all of the emotions, but I just wanted to say that is why I have a big gap in my reading. I freaked out for about a month and a half and didn't read any books. I was trying to absorb all information possible from the internet, from Google, from TikTok, from other people's advice on how to raise a child and go through pregnancy. So this little nugget is why I haven't read that much these past few months, but hopefully I'll read a little bit more now that I'm feeling a little better. I just entered my second trimester. The first trimester was very rough on me. I was very nauseous. A lot of the time I was just sleeping and trying not to throw up, so I will not bore you with all those gross details, but we will have another bestie on the channel. We just found out the gender, so I will give more details as time goes on, but again, I will not be a mommy influencer. I will not profit off my kids. I will not be showing my child's face. This channel will still be about books, maybe a few additional vlog style videos if we're doing something fun, but this will not be a family channel because I do not want to profit off my child like that. So thank you for watching my spring reading wrap up. I apologize for how behind I am, but those are all the books I read this spring. If you didn't watch my summer TBR video, please go check that out to see all the books we're reading in summer, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.